Me again. Sorry. The movie didn't cut off that time. I cut it off. My kiddos were getting a little too excited about their lightsaber tournament they were having. So we're going to pick up where we left off. So right before we left off, Bright Bill said, "Mom, there's a big wave." And then this is what happened. The rowboat was pulled up the side of a towering wall of water. It teetered at the top, and then the boat went crashing down the other side with such force that the whole thing splintered apart. Roz felt water surging up around her. She clung to debris and kicked her legs, but she wouldn't stay afloat for long. The robot began to sink. The goose floated above. The ocean rolled and sloshed. Then there was a sudden burst of air from somewhere nearby. Brightbill looked toward the noise, but saw only sea spray drifting on the breeze. And when he looked back to his mother, she was dipping below the surface. "What can I do, Mama?" Brightbill cried from the air. "Tell me what to do." "There's nothing more you can do," came Roz's gargling voice. "I am sorry." The young goose could only watch as the ocean dragged the robot down, down, down. And there's Roz on the robot. Chapter 64, The Sea Creature. Brightbill hovered on the wind and watched his poor mother sinking into the depths. He could still see her body sparkling brightly against the darkness, but she was fading fast. The goose closed his eyes, hoping this was all a bad dream. He heard the distant horns of ships by the seaport. He heard buoys clanging in the harbor. He heard ocean waves churning and frothing louder and louder and louder and louder. The goose opened his eyes and saw the ocean bulging upward. A giant sea creature was rising from the deep. It breached the surface and sent waves rolling away. The creature had a large mouth and long fins and a wide back that curved down into the water. There was a loud burst, and mist shot up from a blowhole. As you might have guessed, reader, that giant creature was a whale. More of the whale emerged from the darkness until something sparkled in the sunlight. It was Roz. She was sprawled across the whale's back, wet, limp, and lifeless. Chapter 65, The Whale. The whale swam along the surface of the ocean, keeping our robot safely above the water, gently moving her away from the rough waves. Brightbill couldn't believe what he was seeing. Once the shock wore off, he fluttered down to the whale's back and leaned over his mother. There was no life in her eyes or her body, so the goose did the only thing he could think of. Click. Roz's eyes began to glow. She uttered some human noises, and then, in the language of the animals, the robot said, "Oh, Brightbill, am I happy to see you." The goose squawked with joy and hugged his mother's face, but she didn't move. She couldn't move. The robot had lost the use of her limbs. There were a few tense minutes and a few nervous glances, but as the sun beat down and the wind rushed over her, Roz felt her body drying out. Slowly, gradually, power returned to her arms, then her legs, then she sat up and hugged her son. Brightbill breathed a sigh of relief. "Mama, when you disappeared below the water, I thought you were gone forever." "So did I," said Roz. As I sank deeper and deeper, the ocean squeezed my body tighter and tighter. I lost control of my legs and arms. The last thing I remember was a huge shape swimming toward me. Then I automatically shut down. "That huge shape was a whale," squawked the goose. "We're riding on her back right now." A low moan rumbled up through the whale's body. She splashed the water with her fins and took long, wheezing breaths and sprayed mist high into the air. Roz paid close attention to the whale's behavior and understood what she was saying. The whale's name was Coral, and she was thrilled to meet our friends. She explained that a flock of geese had flown over the bay and regaled the coastal birds with the amazing story of the wild robot and her son, the goose. The coastal birds shared the story with the fish and the dolphins and anyone who would listen. In time, the story spread to every creature in the bay. When Coral saw the robot rowing and the goose flying overhead, she knew it had to be Roz and Brightbill. So she swam behind them in case she could be helpful, and it was a good thing she did. As Coral ferried our friends across the bay, the waves grew smaller and the coastline grew larger. Houses poked out from the trees, sunbathers relaxed on the rocks, boats motored away from the piers. With so many humans around, Roz had to be careful. She lay flat against Coral's back while Brightbill flew ahead and scouted out the coastline. The goose directed the whale to a quiet, empty cove, and soon the robot was standing on dry land again. Roz asked if there was some way she could repay Coral for saving her life, but the whale was just happy to help. She winked one of her enormous eyes, and then she sank beneath the waves. Our friends marched inland, feeling lucky and grateful, but as they thought of the journey still to come, their good feelings gradually turned gloomy. Roz had nearly died crossing that bay. At some point, to get back to the island, she would have to cross an entire ocean. And there's a picture of Roz and Brightbill riding on the back of Coral the whale. Okay. Chapter 66, The New Land. Zoom, vroom, shoom. Automobiles were gliding up and down the road, passing fields and forests and clusters of houses. None of the passengers had any idea that a robot and a goose were watching from the weeds. Our friends had been hiding there for some time, waiting for the traffic to clear, but the automobiles kept coming. Roz noticed a drainage pipe that crossed under the road. The pipe was dark and grimy, but the travelers were getting desperate. Moving through this new land was difficult. There were more humans and robots and buildings and roads than ever before. Roz and Brightbill traveled far out of their way in wide circles just to avoid small towns. As the days passed, the scenery looked more familiar to Brightbill. He remembered flying over these lands on his first migration. He knew the towns would only get larger and closer together the farther they went. It would be much faster to sneak through the towns than to continue going around them. So as night fell, Roz put on fresh camouflage, and with her son watching from the sky, she crept into a town. And that's where we're going to stop today. So tomorrow we'll read chapter 67, which is called The Town. And I look forward to seeing you then. Bye, guys.